All right. So, um, you sent over this research on cumulative effects assessment, CEA,
Yeah,
and how it relates to indigenous food systems in IUSG,
right.
northern Quebec.
Exactly.
We're talking like a massive area,
Huge.
over 400,000 square kilometers,
Yeah, it's vast.
that's been home to the Cree people for over 5,000 years.
That's right. A long time.
So before we get into the research paper itself,
Okay.
the one from the Journal of Environmental Management,
Right.
let's break down what CEA is
Okay.
and why it even matters,
Yeah,
especially in a place like AUSG.
for sure. Yeah, I think starting with the basics is key.
Yeah.
So imagine like a pristine lake,
Mm-hmm.
the kind that, likely dots the IU-Ishchi landscape.
Right.
One small development project might not leave a noticeable mark,
Mm-hmm.
but, when you factor in logging, mining road construction nearby,
Yep. Yeah.
the combined impact on that lake's ecosystem can become pretty significant, even devastating.
Right.
And that's the essence of cumulative effects. It's the long game of environmental impact.
So it's not just about one project. It's
Oh.
about how all these different activities
I-
add up over time.
Yeah.
And why is IU-ISCHI specifically
Mm-hmm.
such an important place to be thinking about this?
Well, for the Cree, their way of life, hunting, trapping, fishing,
Right.
it isn't just about sustenance. It's
Yeah.
deeply woven into their culture and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Their traditional food sources are vital not just for their physical health,
Right.
but for their cultural identity.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting is in one study,
Okay.
biologists initially thought that a lake was completely empty of fish.
Oh.
But when they consulted with Cree elders,
Okay.
they learned that they were just looking in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Huh.
The elders knew where the fish would be later in the season.
Oh, wow.
And it highlights how combining traditional knowledge
Yeah.
and scientific data can lead to a much richer understanding of the environment.
That's a great example. It shows how crucial it is to consider the impact of development on these traditional food systems.
Absolutely.
And the research paper you shared really digs into how a collaborative approach
Mm-hmm.
to managing these cumulative effects could be the answer.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get into that,
Oh.
we need to understand the specific challenges in IU-Ishchi.
Mm-hmm.
And the research paints a pretty stark picture.
Okay.
There's a serious lack of comprehensive wildlife monitoring programs across the region,
Well,
making it really tough to assess the long-term impacts of development.
so we have this vast territory,
Yeah.
a traditional way of life that's deeply connected to the land,
Mm-hmm.
and a lack of data to fully understand how development is affecting the ecosystem.
Exactly.
That's where this idea of collaborative governance comes in, right?
Absolutely. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to solve a complex jigsaw puzzle
Okay.
with only a few pieces.
Yeah.
It's nearly impossible to see the full picture.
Right.
But when everyone brings their pieces to the table, the government and indigenous communities, industry, NGOs, suddenly you can start to see the image emerge.
Okay.
And that's what collaborative governance aims to do.
Yeah.
Bring together these diverse voices to address complex issues collectively.
So instead of working in silos,
Right.
the idea is to create a system where everyone has a voice
Yeah.
and works together to find solutions.
Exactly.
But I imagine that's easier said than done.
Mm.
What did the researchers find when they looked at the realities on the ground
Yeah.
in IU-ISCHI?
They found a mixed bag, to be honest.
Okay.
The good news is that everyone involved,
Mm.
indigenous communities, industry, and government,
Right.
shares a common interest in healthy wildlife populations.
Okay.
They all understand that a thriving ecosystem
Mm.
is crucial for the well-being of the region and its people.
Right.
And that shared interest creates a strong foundation for collaboration.
That makes sense if everyone recognizes the importance of protecting the environment.
Yeah.
That's a great starting point.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing there's some hurdles too.
Definitely one of the biggest challenges they identified was the lack of trust,
Okay.
especially between proponents,
Mm-hmm.
the companies looking to develop projects,
Right.
and NGOs who are often advocating for environmental protection.
Yeah.
Smaller companies often feel like outsiders.
Okay.
And NGOs sometimes worry that industry prioritizes profits over the environment.
And on top of that, you have these power imbalances to contend with.
Exactly.
Large corporations and government agencies naturally have more resources and influence
Yeah,
compared to indigenous communities or smaller companies.
that's right. And that's where things can get tricky.
Yeah.
These power imbalances can lead to situations where the concerns of less powerful groups
Mm-hmm.
aren't adequately addressed.
Right.
The researchers actually use a striking example of eelgrass decline in Ayu Ischi
Okay.
to illustrate this point.
Okay.
Indigenous communities had raised concerns about the impact of development on
Uh-huh.
eelgrass beds,
Yeah.
which are vital habitats for fish and other marine life.
Yeah.
But due to bureaucratic delays and a lack of responsiveness from those in power,
Huh.
significant damage occurred before any action was taken.
That's a perfect example of how power imbalances can have real consequences on the ground.
Yeah.
So while there's this shared desire for a healthy environment,
Hmm.
there's also a lot of baggage to unpack in terms of trust and power dynamics.
Yeah.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, that's where the research gets really interesting.
Okay.
The researchers dug deep into the factors at play in Ayu Ischi,
Mm-hmm.
analyzing the existing legal frameworks and collaborative relationships.
Okay.
They found that while there is some groundwork for collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
specifically through agreements like the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement
Okay.
or JBNQA,
JBNQ.
it's a long way to go.
Okay. So we're starting to get into potential solutions here.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this JBNQA.
Okay.
What makes it so important for fostering collaboration?
Well, the JBNQA was a landmark agreement that recognized the rights of the Cree people
Mm-hmm.
and established a framework for their participation in environmental decision making.
Yeah.
It requires proponents to consult with Indigenous groups and consider their concerns
Right.
before moving forward with development projects,
Mhm.
creating a more inclusive process.
Mm-hmm.
And this agreement provides a strong legal foundation for collaborative governance in Ayu Ischi.
So it sounds like a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And what about other examples of collaboration?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any existing partnerships that could serve as models for the future?
There are definitely pockets of successful collaboration in IUSG,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to managing wildlife and conducting research.
Mm.
However, the researchers noted that proponents,
Okay.
especially smaller companies,
Right.
often feel like outsiders in the collaborative process.
Mhm.
And this can hinder effective data sharing and knowledge exchange.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like even with a solid legal framework
Mm-hmm.
and some success stories,
Yeah.
there are still these underlying issues of trust and inclusion
Right.
that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
What are the researchers' recommendations for overcoming these barriers
Okay.
and making collaborative governance a reality?
They identified several key drivers
Okay.
that could really push collaborative governance forward in IU-ISG.
Right.
Starting with strong leadership.
Okay.
Think of it like an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
You need a conductor to bring all the different instruments together
Yeah.
to create a harmonious sound.
So who would be the conductor in this scenario?
Right.
Who's best positioned to lead this collaborative effort?
Well, the researchers believe that government agencies
So,
are the most suitable leaders for collaborative monitoring in IU-ISG.
Mm.
Primarily because of their regional focus and resources.
right.
They have the capacity to convene stakeholders,
Yeah.
provide funding,
Mhm.
and help establish a framework for data collection and sharing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They have the resources and the mandate to facilitate this kind of collaboration.
Right.
But what about everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
What would motivate other stakeholders, the indigenous communities industry, and NGOs
Right.
to participate in this collaborative monitoring network?
That's where the concept of consequential incentives comes in.
Okay.
It's all about making sure everyone benefits from working together.
Hmm.
For example, the government would get more comprehensive data,
Right.
enabling them to make better conservation and management decisions.
Okay.
NGOs would have more opportunities to protect the environment effectively.
Yeah.
And companies could potentially save time and resources by sharing data and expertise.
So it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Exactly. And in IU-ISG,
Mhm.
collaborative monitoring isn't just a nice to have,
Mhm.
it's practically essential.
Okay.
Remember we talked about the lack of established regional monitoring programs and the sheer vastness of the territory.
Yeah.
Collaborative monitoring is really the only way to effectively track and manage
Huh.
the cumulative effects of development in
Hmm.
such a complex environment.
Okay, so we've established that collaboration is essential,
Right.
that there are existing legal frameworks and some successful collaborations to build upon,
Yeah,
and that everyone needs to see tangible benefits for it to work.
exactly.
But what does that look like in practice?
Okay.
How do we actually move from good intentions to concrete action?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The researchers propose a few concrete steps
Okay.
to turn this idea of collaborative governance into a reality.
Okay.
One of their key recommendations is to establish clear operational priorities.
Okay.
It's about figuring out which areas need immediate attention
Right.
and developing a roadmap for action.
So like a to-do list,
Yeah,
but for the entire region.
yeah, exactly.
What kind of things would be on that list?
Well, they suggest focusing on things like developing regional land use plans,
Okay.
creating a more robust regional environmental framework,
Mm.
and maybe even considering a strategic environmental assessment, or SEA.
Hold on. What's an SEA?
So an SEA is like a really big picture assessment
Okay.
that looks at the potential environmental, social, and economic impacts
Okay.
of policies, plans, and programs.
Right.
And SEA for IU-ISGE could be helpful for understanding how all these different development projects
Okay.
might affect the entire region,
Right.
not just on a project-by-project basis.
Okay, so it's about thinking bigger,
Yeah,
more holistically.
exactly.
What else did the researchers recommend?
So their second recommendation focuses on those project directives we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Remember we talked about how proponents are often only required to do the bare minimum
Right.
when it comes to assessing cumulative effects?
They're just looking at the impact of their own project,
Yeah.
not the bigger picture.
Exactly. So the researchers propose strengthening those directives,
Okay.
ensuring that projects are designed with a greater awareness of their cumulative effects.
Right.
That could mean requiring proponents to consider the impacts of past, present, and future projects
Mhm.
within a larger time frame,
Okay.
not just their own project in isolation.
So making sure they're not just looking at their own little piece of the puzzle,
Yeah,
but how it fits into the whole picture.
precisely. And it's not just about expanding the time frame.
Oh.
The researchers also suggest setting clear thresholds
Mhm.
for acceptable levels of environmental change.
Right.
It's about establishing those boundaries and saying,
Yeah.
okay, we can't go beyond this point if we want to protect the long-term health of the ecosystem.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You need to have some guardrails in place.
Yeah.
What about the third recommendation?
Their third recommendation is all about building capacity.
Okay.
Specifically, they propose establishing dedicated regional monitoring programs equipped with adequate resources and expertise.
Okay.
This could involve training community members in monitoring techniques,
Right.
supporting partnerships between indigenous communities and scientific institutions,
Okay.
and investing in technology and infrastructure for data collection and analysis.
It sounds like a pretty big undertaking.
It is, but it's an investment in the future.
Mm.
Imagine a network of community monitors
Mhm.
trained in both scientific methods and traditional ecological knowledge,
Yeah.
working alongside researchers
Right.
to gather data and track changes in the environment.
Okay.
That would be a powerful force for understanding and managing cumulative effects.
It would also empower local communities to take ownership of the monitoring process
Absolutely.
and ensure that their perspectives are heard.
Yeah.
I'm really
Yep.
liking this idea. What's the final recommendation?
Their final recommendation, and perhaps the most crucial for true collaboration,
Okay.
is promoting open access to data exchange and sharing.
Okay, so right now, a lot of the data collected in IU-ISGE
Yeah.
is held privately,
Yeah.
making it difficult and expensive to access.
Mhm.
I can see how that would be a barrier to collaboration.
Absolutely. The researchers argue that making this data openly available
Okay.
would create a much more transparent and efficient system
Right?
for tracking and managing cumulative effects.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone would be able to see the same information,
Yeah.
leading to more informed and collaborative decision making.
So instead of hoarding information,
Right.
it's about sharing it freely so that everyone can benefit.
Exactly.
Are there any examples of this working well elsewhere?
Actually, yes. The researchers point to the Northwest Territories in Canada
Okay.
as a model for open data sharing in environmental monitoring.
Right.
They have online platforms like the Discovery Portal and the Mackenzie Data Stream,
Okay.
which provide open access to a wealth of environmental monitoring data.
Those sound like incredibly valuable resources.
Yeah.
Imagine if IU-ISGE had a similar system in place.
Yeah.
Researchers, government agencies, indigenous communities, and industry could all access the same data,
Right.
track trends, and work together to find solutions.
Exactly. Open data sharing is a game changer for collaborative governance.
Yeah.
It builds trust, levels the playing field, and empowers everyone to participate in decision making.
So we've got these 4 key recommendations.
Yes.
Establishing clear priorities, strengthening project directives, building capacity for monitoring and promoting open data sharing.
That's right.
It's a comprehensive roadmap for creating a more collaborative approach to managing cumulative effects in IUSG.
Right.
But the big question is, will it actually work?
That's the question.
What do the researchers have to say about the feasibility of all this?
Well, despite the significant challenges we've discussed, the research paints a cautiously optimistic picture.
Okay.
One of the most encouraging findings is the shared willingness among stakeholders to collaborate. Everyone recognizes that protecting IUSG's environment and ensuring the sustainability of traditional food systems is a shared responsibility.
That's inspiring to hear.
Yeah.
But even with good intentions, I imagine there will be hurdles along the way.
Oh, for sure.
What are some of the potential roadblocks that could derail these collaborative efforts?
You're right. Collaboration is rarely a smooth sailing journey.
Yeah.
One of the biggest potential roadblocks, as we've already touched upon, is the legacy of mistrust.
Okay.
Rebuilding trust takes time and consistent effort.
Right.
It requires open communication, transparency, and a willingness to acknowledge past mistakes.
So it's not just about signing agreements and setting up committees.
Right.
It's about fostering genuine relationships built on respect and understanding.
Exactly. And even with the best intentions, power imbalances can still create challenges.
Right.
Ensuring equitable representation and decision-making power for all stakeholder groups, especially Indigenous communities, will be crucial for the success of any collaborative governance model.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't just have collaboration in name only.
Yeah.
It needs to be genuinely inclusive and equitable.
Absolutely.
What about the practicalities of integrating different forms of knowledge?
Right.
We've talked about how valuable it is to combine scientific data with traditional ecological knowledge.
Yeah.
But how do you actually do that in a way that respects both knowledge systems?
That's a great question, and it's something the researchers emphasize as well.
Okay.
Finding ways to bridge different knowledge systems and create a space for meaningful dialogue is essential.
Right.
It requires a shift in mindset, a willingness to learn from each other, and a recognition that there are multiple ways of understanding the world.
It's about moving away from a my way or the highway approach,
right,
and embracing the richness that comes from diverse perspectives.
Precisely. And it's not just about bringing different knowledge systems to the table. It's about creating a process that values and integrates them in a meaningful way.
Right.
This might involve developing new methodologies, adapting existing frameworks, and being open to learning from each other's experiences.
So it's about being flexible, adaptable, and always willing to learn.
Exactly.
It sounds like a challenging but incredibly rewarding process.
Absolutely. And while there's no guarantee of success, the potential rewards for both the environment and the people of IUSG are enormous.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
We've talked about the challenges of cumulative effects, the need for collaborative governance, the specific context of IUSG, and the researchers' recommendations for moving forward.
Yeah.
It's clear that there's a lot of work to be done.
For sure.
But also a lot of potential for positive change.
Absolutely.
What are some key takeaways you hope the listener will remember from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that protecting IUSG's environment and ensuring the sustainability of Indigenous food systems isn't just about government regulations or industry best practices.
Right.
It's about creating a system where everyone has a voice, a stake in the outcome, and a role to play.
You hit the nail on the head. The research really emphasizes that this is a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
And what's particularly inspiring is that even with historical conflicts and existing power imbalances, there's a glimmer of hope.
Right.
The fact that different groups in IUSG are willing to come together and work toward a shared vision.
It's pretty amazing.
It's a powerful testament to their commitment to the land and its future. It makes you think, though, about the practicalities of all this. How do you actually go about integrating different forms of knowledge, scientific data, Indigenous knowledge, industry perspectives, and make sure everyone's concerns are addressed?
Yeah.
It seems like a delicate balancing act.
It certainly is, and it's a question worth pondering for all of us. Even beyond the specific context of IUSG, as we face increasingly complex environmental challenges around the world, finding ways to bridge different knowledge systems and foster genuine collaboration becomes absolutely crucial.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of collaboration. It's not a quick fix, but it does seem like the most promising path forward.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially when dealing with something as complex as cumulative effects.
Absolutely. And it's not just about protecting a specific place like Ayu Ishji.
Right.
The lessons learned here, the importance of integrating different ways of knowing, building trust, addressing power imbalances. These are all valuable insights that can be applied to environmental challenges globally.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into your research, what would you say is the most important thing for the listener to remember about the future of Ayu Ishji and its traditional food systems?
I think the most important thing to remember is that there is hope. While the challenges are real and complex, the commitment to collaboration, the existing legal frameworks like the JVNQA and the shared desire for a healthy ecosystem provide a strong foundation for moving forward.
Okay.
It won't be easy, but the potential rewards for both the environment and the people of Ayu Ishji are enormous.
And that's a powerful message to carry with us as we continue to explore these intricate connections between human activities and the natural world.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Sounds good.
And remember, the future of our planet depends on our ability to work together.